Good morning. Welcome to On the Sideline, OTS Live. My name is Vin Blaine. Really appreciate you coming on. OTS Live is really about getting to know all areas of football. We discuss all areas of the game. Today is no different. My special guest today is no other than Damani Ralph, who I've known for years as a player, and now he's a licensed FIFA intermediary. So let's get going with this, and we're gonna hear all about the role of a FIFA intermediary. Get the difference between a coach, intermediary, and what we're used to calling an agent. All right, Damani, welcome to OTS Live.
Morning, Vin.
I hope everything is good with you. Everything good with you?
Yeah, everything is good, man.
You're staying safe on COVID?
Yeah, we're staying as safe as possible. We got the vaccine that's rolling out now, so we're quite thankful of that. But I appreciate you for having me this morning, man.
It's a pleasure, man. I've known you. Well, put it this way, I've known the family.
Yes.
You was a player at the club that I am affiliated with.
Yeah.
And I am glad to see your growth, know, where you are and still in football.
Yep, you've been watching me since the grassroots.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of aging me, but that's good.
Yeah, man, you look good, man. You look good. So
yeah, well, thank you.
Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, man.
I try, Damani. Listen, as I said, you're here as a FIFA licensed FIFA intermediary, and we are going to discuss that more in depth. But I know you. I know your achievements. Before we get into that side of the conversation, I would love for you to introduce yourself. Tell them your journey, right, through football and where you are now.
Well, it started from humble beginnings in Harborview. Grew up, when really and truly football was the number one sport in Jamaica at the time. There was a lot of excitement around the 1998 World Cup. I remember, memories of being a ball boy, being at the stadium, during that campaign. But before that, Harborview is a very small knitted community. And we had the famous Rocky Park. And that's where, my love for the game began, I had an older brother that played, and then I also had my father that used to play every day. So I would be right behind him and my older brother. And I think that's where the love really came from. And then I also had relatives out by Shootersville that, played a big role in my development of the game, because I was exposed to different environments of the football. So, when I look back at life now, Vin, there's so many people, I can't even name everybody, who's played a very key role into the person I am today. And in terms of the career path that I chose to go. Yeah.
I know you played Premier League for Harborview.
Yeah.
And then from Harborview, you left and you went to where? Tell the people where you went to.
I left Harborview and I went to Bull Bay.
Right.
I went to Bull Bay because...
frustration.
Yes, during that period of time, I refused to be denied an opportunity to play when I felt I was ready.
Yes.
So, it was, during that era of it, we had a lot of talented players coming through.
A lot of talent.
I don't think people know enough, but in the, I would say, mid-90s, into late 90s, Harborview had a real rich crop of players coming through.
Right.
Well, it was difficult for me to accept, be patient and wait as I was a little younger. And, and I felt like I needed to challenge myself. So, Bonnie, big Bonnie, gave me an opportunity to come to Bull Bay. And, I enjoyed that experience because it gave me a whole different perspective of the platform that Harborview provided, but also how difficult it is outside of the Harborview circle just to get an opportunity as a youngster in Jamaica.
And so, I knew you went to college. You did well at Connecticut, University of Connecticut.
Yes. Before Connecticut, though, Vin, I actually and rest in peace, Barrington Gaynor. Barrington was very instrumental in me going off to college because I started out at a junior college in Mississippi by the name of Meridian.
Right.
And Barrington was the one that made that connection. You know, Barrington was still a player coach for Harvard at the time.
Right.
And, you know, I was somewhat in limbo in terms of what I want to do with my life, you know, because I was in sixth form at George's, but I was still on the fence. What am I going to do? Am I going to pursue this football, or am I going to just, you know, continue my education, probably at UWI and play? And Barrington saw me one day and said, listen, I want to talk to you after training now. And I said, no problem, coach. And he said, listen, I know this gentleman here, he's not the best coach. There is a pathway for you to go to school. And, you know, I think it would be a good step for you. You know, I remember Barry Montauk. Barry had made that step, you know, years before me.
Right.
Barrington was the one that introduced him. I said, listen, Barry did it, and Barry moved on to university, graduated, and, you know, I think this will be good for you. You know, I know you're talented and you want to play, but I think this is a good opportunity. So, you know, I'm happy that I took his advice and I went off to Meridian, where, you know, I had a very good collegiate career there. And it was me and Andrew McLeod. So it made the transition much easier, because I'm telling you, it was quite an eye-opener. When you leave Jamaica, go down in the south of Mississippi in the late 90s. So yeah, I went there, and then I did 2 years. Then I moved on to UConn after having, you know, winning the title there, having, you know, broken multiple records in the school. You know, Andrew and I got a full scholarship to go to UConn.
Then we have to, before we get into the areas that we really want to talk about. I know you were in the MLS.
Yes.
And that's an early time in MLS. You were with Chicago, right?
Yes, I was with the Fire.
Right, for 2 years, if I recall.
Yes, yes.
They moved. You moved to another club that was where was that? In the Middle East, or where was it?
It was in Russia.
Russia.
It was Rubin Kazan.
All right, and you're developing all kinds of contacts, all kinds of cultures. You're getting to know all the cultures.
Oh yeah.
And I think that you being there, right? When you left those clubs, what drove you to decide to get into the area of let's call it an agent, before I get to what I want to ask you?
Yeah.
FIFA agent.
I think what drove me in is you know, my career got cut short pretty, you know, right in the peak of where, you know, I was about to make the next step in, you know, in a playing career, quote unquote, what they say, the prime career. So when the injury happened, it had limited me physically, and I was dealing with a lot of depression. So during that period of time, I went back to school, and I had a good support system around me, my wife, my family, my friends. And I think I gave myself some time to do some soul searching, that if it's not football, what am I going to do? You know, I knew for sure that I wanted to go back to school and finish up my degree.
Right.
And during that period, Vin, is where, you know, Patrick McCabe, who is, you know, a friend of mine, but also a colleague, said to me, listen, you have developed a lot of contacts. You're well revered in the sports in the US. You have traveled, you've seen what it takes to play in Europe. You know, why don't you, you know, come and shadow me and, you know, see if this is something that you'd want to do after you finish. And I did that for a few months, you know, and when it was all said and done, when I graduated, I had to make a decision then, because I made a last hurrah to come back. And I was just not myself, you know. The mind was moving at a certain pace, but the limitations from the injuries was playing a big role. And at that point, I said, you know what? I have so much to give back to the game. I didn't want to become a coach. You know, I think I was just a little bit, it was too soon. I was still, you know, angry at how the career ended. So I decided to go down this road in terms of saying, this is how I can give back to young players, you know, to help them to navigate and prepare for this life of what they want. A lot of kids want to be a professional, but they don't know what it takes, the sacrifice, the lifestyle that they have to live, the tough decision they have to make to really have a chance. Because it's a very competitive industry. A lot of people don't. You know, it's a a very small percentage of, let's use a club perspective. If you have a club and you have 100 players in your club, it's probably 10% or 50% of those players will actually get to the elite level. They'll probably play enough, but at the elite level, so it's quite competitive. To say the least. I felt this was my calling in terms of just being able to give back, because football has given me so much, man. And I felt it was my responsibility.
Yeah.
To give back something.
I'm glad, and you see why I ask you, Damani, because you having a journey, being there, done that, you have a bigger, you have a better understanding and a more appreciation, a better appreciation of what these players have gone through at clubs. Because Russia was not an easy place for you.
No.
Right? Culturally, that was out. Yeah. And the MLS was okay because you've been to college in the US, so you kind of have the culture of the US behind you. But I'm glad you chose that pathway. A lot of people want to go into coaching, and you're honest enough with yourself to say you're not ready. I know your dad. Your dad is, was an ardent footballer. He played every day. I can say we because I know he played.
Yeah.
And, did he have any influence in you leaning towards being an agent?
No, we talked about it, but he supported whatever decision I was going to make, because as I said, when it was a difficult time in my life, in terms of figuring out life after football, and that is something as well as to why I want to become an agent, because a lot of players, we struggle. We struggle with redefining ourselves and reinventing ourselves after football, because you have to give it so much. You have to give it so much of you. To be really good at it, and there needs to be a preparation time before you even retire, in terms of figuring out the next phase of your life. So,
okay.
But he supported the decision of becoming. Yeah. He knew I loved the sport.
Yes.
He knew that there was a lot that I could give back.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So now let's get into the meat of the conversation now. Now that you have heard your travels and your sojourning as a player, I know for years ago, all we heard about are FIFA agents.
Yes.
Clubs, every club talk about the FIFA agent, and the players, they align themselves to an agent. But of recently, I know, like, maybe it could be about 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, that we start hearing this word intermediary, this position come in.
Yeah.
You explain to me what's the difference, because I have a take on it, and maybe I should give it to you first, and then you can confirm or deny. But I know that you have people now just coming in, and they are intermediaries. Right? They have no experience as agents, but I guess this is a way for them now to say, oh, I'm an intermediary. Give me the difference now and between an intermediary and what I knew back then as an agent.
Okay, so you're right, Vin. About 4 or 5 years ago, FIFA made some changes where they no longer required a natural person, and a natural person is someone that doesn't have a law degree or any experience in the law industry. And what it allowed now is for the normal person to just be registered with their federation. So if you're a Jamaican, you'd register with the Jamaican Football Federation. You'd pay a fee, and you'd be called an intermediary.
Okay.
You didn't have to have any prior knowledge, experience. You didn't have to go through any testing. You didn't have to go through any qualifications as prior years. When I became a FIFA agent, I had to study the bylaws. I had to study a bit of law. I had to sit an exam.
Yes.
And unless you pass that exam, you were not allowed to act in this field. You weren't allowed to represent players or clubs.
And that was from FIFA, right?
And that was from FIFA. That was from FIFA, and that was mandated to every federation. Whether you're in the US Federation, the Jamaican Federation, Italian Federation, English Federation, you were required by FIFA laws to sit that exam and show that you had enough knowledge, because ultimately you are responsible for your client's life and livelihood. So that has changed. I am not sure what the real agenda behind it was, but now it's opened up the market where, as I said, anybody can say tomorrow that they're an intermediary just by paying the respective fees that the federation requires them to pay from an intermediary.
Then, all right. So I asked this question because there was some doubt and other people believing that it's the same thing. I remember in the early days, I concur with you. In the early days, I remember there were a test that they had to do through the federation. So if they're in Jamaica, they'll go through Jamaica Football Federation.
Yes.
And they would sit the test there, and that's how they become. And then I hear this thing about intermediary, and a lot of people know, oh, I'm an intermediary. I represent my player, and a lot of times they mess up the player because they don't know how to negotiate.
Yeah.
And then they feel as if to say, well, I am the person. All right.
It's not only the negotiating piece, nothing. I think a lot of people don't understand. When you're an agent or an intermediary, as we're dubbed these days, your responsibility is far more than just negotiating. You have to create a career plan, pathway for your player, for your client, because not every move is the right move. In terms of the next steps, there needs to be steps. So you start working with a youngster at 16, 17. There is a career path. You have to have an end game as to where you want to see the player by the time he's 23, 24. And that takes time and an experience to gather how to navigate a youngster's career that way. So it does at times confuse the market, I think, and it does lead to a couple of youngsters being led down the wrong pathway because they just align themselves with someone that doesn't have enough experience. And I am all for someone having the desire and the passion to become an intermediary. But I think as players, you need to do your homework. You need to make sure that you're aligning yourself with someone that can set you up for success as well.
I think this is a good segue to what I want to go next. But I want to ask a question before I go there. You think that a player not understanding or a club not understanding the role and the responsibilities, but I'm going to come to, right? That the player can be affected by getting the wrong information.
Yeah, you see it from time to time where the player, unfortunately, is kind of caught in the middle. Where the club might align himself with another intermediary.
Yes.
And that intermediary might not have the same experience or relationships that could really help the youngster right now. Because as a young player, you kind of want to align yourself with an agency that's going to be able to propel your career forward and not kind of be on your curtail.
Yeah.
To build themselves up.
Okay.
And sometimes, the players get caught in the middle there where, they make a decision. And you can't fault them at times, Vin, because if you're a youngster back home in Jamaica right now, and you're playing for a specific club, and the club says, well, listen, this is who you have to work with, because this is our guy. And you have to decide that you're going to go against the grain. You lose that platform.
Yeah.
Platforms for these youngsters. So instances like that, Vin, can become, detrimental to a youngster, to a player.
Yes. So it's a role. It's the role of the clubs and the players to be informed, to get informed of what
Absolutely.
All right. So let me take this opportunity to welcome some of my guests who have come on late. Just come on to the program. We are discussing with Damani Ralph. Is a guest. He's a licensed FIFA intermediary. That's what it is. Not to be mistaken by someone who just says he's an intermediary. Representing players is important, and if you don't do it the right way and give them the correct information, you can destroy players' careers. So I want to welcome you. If you have questions, any questions you might have, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll get to them. And while we are going, and we'll ask, and Damani will answer them as we go along. All right. So Damani, all right. Now, as I say, it was a good segue for what you're saying. Let us look at the role of an agent, and I have agent there. And I'm going to change it to intermediary. But it's one of the same as far as I'm concerned, because the agents were what you had to do, had to go through what you had to do to get licensed. All right, so give me the difference as an agent, or let me use the current term, as a licensed intermediary. What are some of the rules and some of the responsibilities you have? to your players?
For the players, the responsibility is to ensure that there's an opportunity for them to find a club, to have a team. That's the number one rule, because you are responsible for their livelihood. The day-to-day role is to just make sure that they're making good decisions off and on the field, such as their lifestyle. You have a youngster and on his first contract. Have you educated them about the financial responsibilities of making sure that they're saving, making sure they have a pension plan that's being put in place. You want to make sure that they're eating right. You want to make sure that they're sleeping right. And then you want to also create opportunities off the field for them, whether that's through endorsements, which generally goes hand in hand with the player's success. As the player has success on the field, there'll be more opportunities off the field. Those are the key things, Vin. That is the role of an agent. Your role is to make sure that you use your network to provide an opportunity for the player. And
can players come to you as an agent and say, I want your services as an intermediary? Can they? Do they have the right outside the club, or do they have to go through the club?
No. They don't. They don't have to go through the club. Players can always approach any agent that's out there or an intermediary for their services. The club, within their rights, can also seek the services of an intermediary or an agent. So it's not like the player needs the blessings or the AOK from a club to speak with an intermediary.
And so now that a player decides to go to Damani Ralph, to engage them or to appoint them as their own agent, what opposition you normally would run into from the clubs themselves?
I think the clubs just want to make sure that the intermediary will also be doing their best efforts to look after the club. You can't look after both. Obviously, when I represent a player, the player is number one. But at the same time, you can't lose the big picture that you have to take care of the club, because they have to have some resource to continue to build up the next player, to invest in the grassroots kids coming through. So that's typically the issues you'd run into. It is that you need to make sure that you're aligned with the club, but obviously, as I said, the player is priority.
Okay, and Damani, I've been hearing all kinds of stories. I've heard players say things and clubs saying other things about agents. Some clubs fear agents. Some clubs who want to transfer a player, or some clubs in Europe, for instance, or even the US, try to stay away from players who are attached to an agent. In this regard, what do you think are the responsibilities of the clubs in this? The clubs where the players are coming from.
I think, Vin, I think there's two sides to that. I think the clubs in Europe who are wary of agents, it's not to say that they don't respect the roles of the agent. I think it's more a fear that the agent is going to move a player that's very, very important to the club too soon, where it affects the club. Because moving one or two players can be the demise of a club in Europe. In terms of what they're doing. So I think that's more so where the clubs and the agents in Europe have more, of a clash, is where you'll have a high-profile player.
Yeah.
This club wants to hold on for Champions League reasons. They want to qualify for Champions League. They want to stay in the top league. And here comes the agent, moving him, because, as I said before, the client is always the number one priority. So if there's going to be a better opportunity for the client, the agent is always going to advise the client as such. So I think that's the issues in Europe. I think locally, when I say locally, I mean in the Caribbean region, not only Jamaica.
Yeah.
I think the clubs tend to fear that the agent is really just looking out for the player in the best interest of the club. Maybe true at sometimes, Vin, but I said, it's a responsibility to try and make sure that there is enough going back to the clubs, the parent club, because that's what's going to continue to create an opportunity for the next youngster coming.
Yeah, but you see, and I agree with you, it's as an intermediary, it's like you're a mentor for these players, because you now have to bring them the reality of the situation, what they might be faced with, and you try to get the best deal for them. That's what it's all about. And your clubs must be now stop thinking about what you are making. What you're doing is you're offering a service to the player and also to the club.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times you hear, the intermediary is only thinking about himself, what he can get from it, and not so much a player. And I don't buy into that. I know from my position, and I could be wrong, but it's my opinion, that a lot of clubs who think that the local clubs, say in the Caribbean, let me use the Caribbean, that's where I am from, they don't respect that transfer as if they would take a player from a bigger country, say Holland or one of those places. They feel that they should get the players free.
Yeah.
And offer you little or nothing for the player after the club has invested from we have had players at the club that at Harborview that we have invested from their maybe 8 years old all the way to they getting a contract. The club should get something from it.
That's a constant struggle, Vin, and part of the reason for that is the lack of visibility of our players at the big stage.
Right.
It doesn't make it right, but it's always a struggle, and you get caught sometimes, Vin, in a rock and a hard place, because here's an opportunity for a youngster. What do? Do you say, I'm not going to allow the youngster to go because I'm not being compensated on the front end? But I think you, because if he had gone down to Brazil, you could never have approached the club with these conditions.
Right.
But, we always kind of get caught in a tough place as Jamaicans right now. And I think there's an easy remedy to this, Vin. We just have to make sure that we're investing enough in our football domestically so that the national team will continue to garner the respect it is due. If we do well at the senior team level, it increases the value of the product. It increases the value of every player. Ian Bailey, Shamar Nichols, Kamar Lawrence, they're all doing great things in Europe right now.
Yeah.
You have Damon Lowe that's over there in Egypt. You have Romaro. It's all about the visibility, and once people see more of us, then the value goes up. The US is seeing it right now, Vin. The US is seeing it in their domestic market now, where the success of the Christian Pulisic, the youngsters who are now coming through. That's the reason why when our club comes and approach, our European club comes and approach a club in the US now. And drop a price tag on the front end saying this is what we want, because teams are saying, what, we're seeing more and more Americans now having some kind of success, not at mediocre clubs in Europe, but at top clubs in Europe. That's the model that our federation needs to understand, that once we continue to improve at the senior team level, this will be a trickle-down effect on the clubs back home,
Yeah, but you can see what happened with Alphonso Davies from Canada. He broke into his Bundesliga, right?
Yeah.
And he's doing so well. So it gives more credibility to their program, right?
Oh, absolutely. And people don't even know the story behind it. There were so many clubs, Vin, that said no to Alphonso Davies, and not because the kid wasn't talented, because he's Canadian. Because he's Canadian.
Yeah.
And those are the barriers that we have to continue to climb over and kick down as it relates to Caribbean football. It's not just Jamaica, Trinidadians, whatever it may be from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Struggles that we have to continue to face, but we have to face them, strong.
For sure.
Move forward, because as I said, we have had prior players to the ones who are having success in Europe now, who have shown that given the right opportunity, we can perform at that level. We can have success at that level.
I believe that too. I believe wholeheartedly that we can. But all right, so in this regard, with the players being exposed, what are some of the what areas you think the clubs can be responsible for to get the players apart from making a national team where they'll be exposed?
Yeah.
Are there anything that is there anything that the clubs could do to, because I think, I don't want to answer the question, but I want to say something that I've come across all the time. There are no videos of these players. The games are not videotaped, and so they have no compilation of what the youngster can do. You think that would help?
Absolutely, that will help. Then, but when we look at the responsibilities of the local clubs, Vin, and what they can do better, we have to take a holistic approach on it. And it starts from the grassroots program, from their 12. We have to start developing them in a way where they understand, Vin, that we have to teach these youngsters how to be professional from an early age. What does that mean? Holding them accountable, showing up to practice on time, keeping a very high tempo in training, keeping it very focused, teaching them about how important nutrition is at that age, how getting good rest is at that age. It has to start from there, and those are the small things I think that we overlook, but are very key ingredients for them to have some success by the time they're 16. Because that's, for me and my experience so far, that's been the biggest struggle. When you give a youngster an opportunity at 16, 17, and you expose them to a higher level of football outside of Jamaica, they struggle from the standpoint because they don't know how to operate in that environment. They're not good enough, and they can't adapt. But you don't have the luxury of the time when you take a kid on a 2-week trial to go adapt to that. And clubs need to understand that it is their responsibility to ensure that they start to encourage and mold these players as young professionals.
To educate them, to educate these players. Because I asked that for a specific reason, in the sense that I think the clubs don't look at it that way. It's just like, for instance, I can probably use a analogy here with a different situation. Like clubs coming up from the not Premier League, but what we call in Jamaica what do I call it? The first division in Jamaica. I remember it shortly. But those clubs are not given an idea what it takes to be in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Right? The Super League, it's called. So clubs in the Super League and are in the final rounds, the playoff rounds to become to move up into the Premier League.
Yeah.
They are not. I don't think the JFF or whoever is in charge of the game are that these clubs, the 4 clubs that are playing off. I say, guys, listen, this is what's going to happen. You need to make sure your bank account is up. You need to make sure you have this in place. Players are going to want more money now. The ones that are playing for you free now at Super League. Once you reach the Premier League, they're going to want money to play. And then you also going to want to go and scout for players who definitely going to want money. Right? Yeah. Are you prepared for that? Right? I can put this now along with this situation with players. The player's going to leave your club. You know it's being worked on to get a contract. How are you educating this player? How are you going to prepare this player to move from 30,000 Jamaican to 10,000 US? Right? How are you preparing this player mentally? And how are you telling them this is what happens? Are you now contacting other players who have made it before them and let them mentor them to say this is what is going to happen now, right? And this is why I like to move now from the role of the clubs, right? This is part of the role of the clubs, the responsibility of the clubs. What do you think about that?
I think it's important, Vin. I think the role of the club is just as important as the role of the player, because it's a partnership. Yes. The club provides the platform for the player, and then the player has to execute when they get on the platform. I don't know what the JFF has in place, but I would assume that there has to be some kind of protocols that needs to be in place for the clubs who are looking to come into the Premier League.
There's none. I can tell you that. If it's now in place since I've left, But when I was there for the years, we sat with the clubs in meetings, and none of them have an idea what's happening.
Well,
right?
that's part of the problem, then, Vin. You asked me the responsibility of the club, and that is it. If the club doesn't have structure, how do you expect the players to have structure prepared?
Exactly.
In an environment that's run professionally.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. That's why I raise this because we have people from clubs on the line right now and from different countries too. And it's right to the Caribbean, Damani, it's right to the Caribbean. It's a commonality between the clubs throughout the Caribbean.
And Vin, don't get me wrong, I understand the financial constraints that's in the Caribbean. So I'm in no way disregarding that now. But what I am talking about is daily life skills that we teach these youngsters.
Before we move on, I have one of my guests want to ask a question, and see if you can, Damien. I know Damien is a Jamaican. He's in Turks and Caicos at the moment, right? And I don't know if you can read it. I've heard players say it over and over about being in Europe, that they have to do more than others because of which country they are from. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not just in Europe, man. I mean, I played in MLS. I'm sure if you speak to all the other Jamaicans and Caribbean players who have played in MLS, they'll tell you the same thing. We were held at a different, higher standard as everybody else. And again, that's what I am saying, Damon, is until we are consistently shown to the world that we are capable of and competing and doing well internationally, we'll consistently be put in that position where we're asked to do more, less opportunities, we're given less windows to shine. And unfortunately, that's just the world that we live in right now.
Right. And we spoke about that before. I mean, you answered it beautifully. I agree. Damien, I've always had problems with Damien's name, He's not the regular Damien.
Yeah.
But I call him Damien anyhow. But it is interesting. I'm sure he's a teacher actually by profession. Okay. And I'm sure he is there and having cultural differences when he got there too, We spoke about this already. And this is another question for you from Kennedy. And I can tell you, I know Kennedy. Kennedy is actually played in Trinidad. He's actually a Grenadian of connection, but he played his football in Trinidad. I'm not sure if he's still there. But he represented the Grenadian national team, a very good number 6. But he's saying, what about if clubs don't want a player because the player have an agent? And we referred to that earlier. Yes. Some clubs don't want players with an agent.
And I'm assuming Kennedy's talking about the local clubs in Grenada.
I think he's talking about Kennedy. You can respond in the chat, Kennedy. But I think he may be speaking about clubs overseas. That
listen, it's a kind of addressing the elephant in the room. The corruption in the football is everywhere, and you have clubs in Europe that's aligned to a certain network of agents, and that's who they do business with. So if you're going to bring a player to a specific club, maybe you have to go through an agent that the club is comfortable with.
All right, so we can now move on to another area we want to discuss, Damani. We went through road of an agent, intermediary. We have some people that are intermediaries that don't know much about that, but call themselves intermediaries. We look at the responsibilities of the clubs towards that process of getting the players the right information. You think that the clubs, I think I've asked this question before, but I want to just ask again. You think that clubs have the responsibility to make sure that the agent that the players are selecting are, reputable?
Of course. The clubs have to do a vetting process to know that the person that they're going to entrust a player's livelihood is someone that, one, has a reputable career, has had the experience and the know-how to advise, and also to give the club direction in terms of what might be the best move for the youngster or the player. I think 100% it's negligence on any player or club part if they don't do some homework before they decide to sign a dotted line with an agent or an intermediary.
Yeah, okay. I tend to want to go with you there, and I hope it answers a lot of people's concerns and questions. Kennedy did say yes, he's talking about overseas clubs who don't want players from because they are aligned to an agent, and that's something that's common.
Yeah, that's common. Like I said, there's different clubs that have different relationships, and they might feel more comfortable with a specific agent, and the player might have an agent collaborate with that agent who knows the club.
Okay,
and that's normal. That's normal.
All right, so let's move on to I think this is the most important area, right? Because you as an intermediary, you sign with the player, you get the player overseas. Now let us look at after that process. What are the rules for the player's role in that all of that?
Well, as a former player, Vin, that's been there, I always say you have to hold the players accountable. The agent's responsibility is to get you a contract. The player responsibility beyond that is to secure that contract and to continue to improve as an individual, as a player, so that they can get a better paycheck and a better salary package at some point. So it's important that when the player comes, they adapt as quickly as possible. They put in that extra work and that extra effort to continue to grow as a player. They really have to insert themselves and really buy into that process and not get too carried away with, the newfound success, whether that's, social standpoint and from a financial standpoint. That's the key role of the player. The player's responsibility then is to ensure that they keep that job or that they continue to get better as a player so they can get even a bigger opportunity to go.
Right. No, I've always tried to tell players, I've never been a player overseas, but from a coaching standpoint, I've said to players before, because I've heard a player come back to Jamaica, say he's not a flat 4-4-2 person. He's a defender, and he got a contract to go off. And I've been saying to them, I want your real take on this, because I think this is one of the areas that we struggling as that the players struggling. When a club scouts you, they know what you can do. But it's for you now to prove that you can play within their game model, their system.
Yeah.
And not because you're a prolific goal scorer here. They don't want you to come there and play with the way you want to play. They still want you to score. Yeah. But can you fit into their system? Do you find that to be a concern?
It is a concern, Vin, and as I stated before, it's a responsibility of the player to adapt. Unless you're Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi or just one of the greats, a club is not going to change up their philosophy for you. It's your responsibility to go in, adapt, and listen, there's never a perfect situation. I have gone on teams where, it was not comfortable in terms of the role that they wanted me to play. But as a professional, you have to go in and say, all right, how do I make this work for me?
Right.
At the end of the day, what option do you have if it doesn't work there? I think that's where I think players tend to lose the plot at times.
Yeah.
It becomes too personal, and they forget that this is an opportunity for me. Even if it doesn't work out at this specific club, depending on how I carry myself and how I take the opportunities when I do get on the field, there can be an opportunity somewhere else.
Yes.
But if you fail to apply yourself and perform, then no other club is going to give you an opportunity, because they're going to say, okay, if he couldn't adapt and adjust there, why should I bring him? Why shouldn't I go out and find some other international that I think can come and make that jump and make that adjustment sooner? So the players have to understand that it's their responsibility, Vin, and I use this word a lot, professional. It is a sport, it is an activity, but players need to understand it is a professional job that they're doing, that they have to go in and act professionally, and they have to work hard, They have to have a good character,
Mm-hmm.
good in the locker room. You know, they have to do all these little things then outside just kicking the ball.
Yeah. And I personally found out that I've heard them travel. I've heard them having problems in the game or in the team. And I think it starts from home. I always start off by saying I'm not knocking the clubs.
Yeah.
But if they don't have a game model, if the coach doesn't have a game model that they play, that their own personal game model, that's the way they want the players to play.
Yeah.
Right. So the players are not used, they're not oriented that way. So when they go away, you see, they do what they want to do in the team.
Yeah.
They run where they want to run, they do what they want to do. Yeah. And if you look at the game now, and I see you're champing at the bit to as to come in there. But
because it boils down to Vin to what we call tactical awareness.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, we need to ensure that we're tactically teaching these players what each role requires of them.
Right.
We have to be tactical discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's no secret. There's never a question about a Jamaican not being talented enough.
Exactly.
Athletic enough.
Mm-hmm.
You always hear the same answers when they come getting a report on how they did in a trial. Had everything, but tactically was just naive. You know, discipline-wise was just too. You know, it wasn't disciplined enough. It's always reoccurring now, and it goes back to what we said. It's the responsibility of the clubs to train them and have them prepared for that, because that is what has been hurting us in the market. As
Right.
Going to South America and signing an 18-year-old or 19-year-old versus the Caribbean. You know, always just how further ahead the South American was from a tactical standpoint versus a Caribbean player who is superior to them.
Yes.
In terms of, you know, certain natural gifts. But the game is just not played from a physical standpoint.
Right.
It appears as well.
A lot of head space.
Yeah.
The mindset is important. And I want to go back to something that Damien made a comment here. And it's a little bit between the clubs and the coaches. When I say clubs, I'm probably including the coaches, because they are the person that they're responsible for the players' development.
Yeah.
So Damien had said that player ethics and morals are very important in development, especially in the early days, in the early stages of the player's career development. In the foundation phase, that we can probably look at it as. So maybe that is really a part of the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
From that early age, the players have to be guided in certain areas, the social, you know, the technical. I think a lot of time we concentrate too much on the technical side of things. You know, when a player control the ball dead, or the crowd goes off. When the player beats a man in a 1v1 situation, the player goes off. But then what do you do after you beat the man in the 1v1 situation?
Yeah.
You know, with the ball, do you play the way the coach that the team that you go to want to play? Do you want to switch the ball there? You know, so I think that is part of the whole development process.
And Vin, you can relate to this. You know, through your years of, you know, being in the football world.
Yes.
How many times have you seen us do a disservice to our more talented players by saying, you know what, you want a big ball up on the team, so you know, now if we go work against the ball, and then if we go tackle.
Right.
In the ball.
Right.
That's when it works in the Caribbean. Like, you know, you have to know to be able to play on both sides of the ball. You have to have that appetite. So when you don't instill that from their 12 up to 14, 15, 16, 17, I expect them now to go flip that switch when you put them on a trial, and the club is requiring them to have a certain amount of running volume that they have to put into a game. They can't do it.
Yes.
It's not that they don't want to do it, you know. They just have not developed the capacity for that. There's a block in the brain, because as soon as they reach that point of their breaking point, they can't get over it.
So I sort of put the onus on the club and the coaches to start educating these players on when you recognize that the player has the ability to be transferred. It's your money you're talking about, the club, you know, right? Yeah, exactly. But don't just let them develop at their own rate and do whatever they want to do, and you send them out just because you want to make the money. Because you have a sell-on clause. You have a sell-on clause. So
Yes.
if they can go there and do well, the sell-on clause will get them maybe much more money than they got for him in the beginning.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think the responsibility there, but also we are talking about the players have to be mature enough to understand the needs, what it needs for them to move to the next level. This is why I always look at Ricardo Gardner. 10 years, never hear anything about him. He started every game unless he was injured. Yeah. And he had that maturity. And I look at him, and it's from above you, like where you are from too, right? And I see that he was so mature at 17 years old, at 18 years old. Where did he get that from? Maybe it's an ingrained in something within him. But can we get that from players? And it's important. The players don't understand that we can't put all the onus on the clubs and the coaches.
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely. I remember years ago when I played Manning Cup, and I can say it. And my playing Manning Cup, you're always considered as one of the better players. And I had people waiting outside the stadium when I come out to follow me down the road. People, dreadlocks, and I know people who smoke weed, and I'm speaking straight Jamaican now.
Yeah.
I never had my head on my body. I'd have probably gone there.
Well,
so the responsibility lies with the players. So that's why I looked at on the roles of the players, because it's important that we understand the role, what the roles, the players' roles to all of this.
The player is responsible for their own career, You are responsible for your own success. You align yourself with a club and an agent that can enhance it and set you up for that success. But your responsibility, it's your responsibility to make sure that you're keeping yourself in the best shape as possible. You're responsible as a player to make sure you're on the right nutritional diet. Body fat is at a certain way.
Right.
It's your responsibility to want to get up every day and become a better player. That is not the responsibility of the club and the agent. The agent is there to push you, but if your agent have to push you to want to have success, then chances are you're not going to have it.
Right. That is true. And because we raise this point because this is about you being an intermediary. But you being an intermediary have seen everything. You have been there, you have done that, you have played overseas, you have played in one of the toughest leagues, in Russia.
Yeah.
You go to a different place, no language, there's a language barrier.
Yeah, there's a language, cultural barrier, there's everything.
Cultural barrier, right? You have to go off and walk off by yourself to where you live. You have to come against all these. And if you don't have a strong mind, I've had a youngster years ago. You know him, but I won't call his name on it. He went away to Russia. Same Russia. The club had offered him, apartment, car, everything, living out accommodations. And he went there, and they put him in a dorm in the initial stages. And he didn't have the wherewithal and the maturity to say, it wasn't going to be forever.
Yeah.
Tough
the first 2 weeks.
Exactly. Maybe the clubs were not in a position, although they promised you, they were not in a position now to really give you what you wanted. I know the money he was making is far more than he was making at the club. And he went ahead and came back home to $30,000 a week.
Yeah.
When he was making, I can tell this, he was offered 10,000 US.
Yeah, but Vin, the question there again is this now. How much, I won't say fault, but how much education did this player have in terms of a mentor who could sit him down and say, listen, this is your break.
Right.
You have to be desperate enough to understand that this is your opportunity. And that's the difference, I think, culturally, that sometimes we see with the Jamaican players versus the African players. That they are so desperate for an opportunity that they will jump on any opportunity and make the most of it in order to get forward. At times I think we become too short-sighted.
Right.
The bigger picture. We don't look at life. As I said, you have to have someone that's going to be able to visually paint the picture for you in terms of pathway and the steps that you need to take in your career.
Yeah. I definitely believe that too. Then I have a good comment from a coach, where he was former coach. I think he's just kind of pulled back on coaching and get into a different area of the game, right? And I don't know if you can see that, because I think my thing is freezing. Can you see that?
Yes, I can see it.
From Everton Edwards?
Yes, I can see it.
All right. So Everton is a former coach. He's now located in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
You can just read it for me, because you can see it's up on my side.
To concentrate on the social, psychological, physical, and tactical equality. These are intricate parts of football development, and Everton is spot on.
Mm-hmm.
This is all intertwined, entangled together. One is not more important or less important than the other one.
Mm-hmm.
In order to have the complete player, you have to prepare them in all facets of what Everton is mentioning.
Yeah.
You have to know how to integrate into the social world of the locker room, cheering, to understand that you might not agree with someone's culture, but you have to respect it.
Yeah. And before I get into my final phase, there are two statements by Sino, and I'm going to put it up on there so we can look at it. It's quite long, but there's two parts to it, right? He's saying, given the constraints around local clubs, and given that we will still be held to a higher standard and expected to perform wherever we go, what can we do to move the needle with our local team talent? I think you touched on it a little bit, but
yeah, I touched on it earlier. I think in terms of trying to change that narrative, it starts from at the top. It starts from us being able to consistently perform at the international stage, consistently, and do well. And I think once we do that, and then we have more players leaving the Caribbean, playing in respectable leagues, you will see a change in this. You would see now where the respect will automatically just be transferred now to a youngster coming through, because the teams will know that if they put in the right effort and time in these young talents, there can be 15 Leon Baileys, they can be, 10 Shamar Nicholsons, Kamar Lawrence, Damon Lowe. The list can go on and on, Corey Burke. It can go on and on, but I think it all starts from there.
Yeah, and he had a follow-up statement, and he says, and is there some centralized body in place that ensures that clubs have a certain curriculum in place that focuses on some basic level of development at a minimum?
I laugh here because, yes, this is responsibility of the JFF. The JFF should have a mandate, a curriculum that goes out to all the clubs in Jamaica, regardless if you're playing in the Premier League, the Super League, or the next league. There has to be a curriculum, of certain best practices, certain basic things that needs to be done in the club as it relates to developing the players.
I agree with that. I say it's not there because it's important that we realize that, the onus is on, and I'm glad we went there. To be honest with you, I purposely wanted to go there because a lot of time we talk about agents and we blame the agents for everything. We blame the intermediaries for everything, and not realizing that they, as a club and as players, they have a responsibility to do. All you can do is get them there. You can't keep them there. They have to keep themselves there. And the clubs, I think the clubs from an early age, I've seen players not make it because they were not given the proper guidance. And I think we should really look at that. So now, all right. So now we're coming to the final piece now, Damani. Becoming a consultant, which is what I saw on your first thing. Is there the consultant? Is that considered an intermediary?
Yeah, it is considered intermediary as well. It is considered intermediary as well. You consult with clubs. You consult with different areas in terms of the football world. So yes, you are considered a consultant as well.
Okay. Now, we want to go now to the final part. How do you become a FIFA agent? But I think we touched on it at the start of the program. But is there anything now, intermediary? Let's go, forget about the agent now. Let's go to the intermediary. How one can become an intermediary right now?
Vin, sorry about that.
Yeah, I lost you for a while. Yeah.
To become a FIFA consultant, the steps, I don't think there's any steps anymore, Vin, because I said they've changed up the protocols in terms of how to become an agent.
Mm-hmm.
No longer have to go through that tedious and suffocating, 500 booklet of the FIFA bylaws and everything. So the only thing I would say is to become an intermediary, which is quite simple. As I said, you would just need to contact your federation to ask them what are the steps, the fees in terms of, becoming a licensed intermediary. That way you can operate. And then if you want to operate and do work outside of your local federation, you'll need to get in touch with that federation. So like if you want to operate in the US, you get in touch with the US Soccer Federation. They'll give you the fees and the forms that you need to complete, and then registered where you can operate in that federation. And the same goes for every federation, whether that's in Holland or Belgium or Sweden, Denmark, it would be the same.
Okay, good. And somebody is agreeing with you, 100% agree with the need for a curriculum in football. Imagine if the Ministry of Education didn't have one. So he's saying, I agree with him. Yeah, you have to have a curriculum to work off. And I think we can look at it two different ways also. We are in the football should have that type of arrangement. So quite agree with him. All right. So what we are going to be looking at now is we talk about your the need for the clubs are responsible. We talk about the responsibility of the players. As an intermediary, I think all of that would help you. So we are looking at now. We are definitely looking at in what way that these people can that the clubs can benefit from this particular conversation here. I think they should recognize that is something very important. They are finally from your perspective, Damani. Just tell me. I want to recap and just go over. It's important, and I want to speak to the player as an intermediary. You get a player into a club. Just maybe just a little pointers. What should the players expect, and what their responsibilities would be there?
Getting the player in, Vin.
Yeah, you have already gotten them in. What are the responsibilities for them now? Some of the things that they should pay attention to make sure that they're maintained, that they keep their contract.
I think it's just learning every day, Vin, in terms of being a professional, coming every day, putting in that extra work, whether that means spending 15-20 minutes after every training session, work on their weaknesses. If training is supposed to start at 9 o'clock or 9:30, don't show up at 9:15. Show up an hour before so that you can do some activation work. You can come in, you can have your cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and then you can go into the gym and get yourself going and do some work before. It's really just that extra commitment, Vin, I have seen very average players as a player and as an agent that have very long careers. And everybody's success is viewed differently, right? You might not go and play for a Champions League club, but if you end up playing for 15 years and earning good money, is that still not considered a successful career? Sometimes as players, we lose sight of that. It's almost like we take for granted the privilege, the opportunity of being in that environment. And we don't use up all the resources that's there. And I think players need to understand that every club now, Vin, is equipped with a nutritionist, you know. They're equipped with a physical trainer, you know. Our players need to understand they're there to help them, you know, to have success, you know, to continue to get better. And we try to encourage them, be open to engage these people, go and have a conversation with them, have them put together a specific plan for you that you can benefit from 6 months from now.
Right.
What I'd like to see more from my Jamaican players is take
and the wider Caribbean. And the wider Caribbean.
Yeah. Take that responsibility for your own success.
Yes. Agree. Well, I think that's a good way to end this broadcast, Damani.
Oh, absolutely.
It was a pleasure seeing you actually again, and getting a good.
It's been a while since we see each other. I think the last time we see each other, we booked up in the airport. I think you were back to
Yeah, true. It's a long time. It's a long time.
Yeah.
But I hope that the listeners here have benefited, and the people who have met might be, you know, get back and review this and view this again later on.
Yes.
It is important that we put across the information that some of the doubts can be cleared up, and we get a better understanding what your role is as a intermediary, a better understanding of the roles of the clubs, what is expected from the club and the players to make this a success between the intermediary, the player, and the club. Right. So I said thanks again for coming on. It was my pleasure having you on. I hope we can do this again when you become, I don't know, maybe some what more can you do, Damani, is an intermediary. Oh, before I go, could you mention you're an intermediary, but I know you work with a company. Can you just tell me who that company is? Tell us who that company is.
So yes, I work with ICM Stellar Sports right now. ICM Partners is one of the biggest talent agencies in the US. And we have merged with them. Stellar Group, as a lot of people would know, is the number one agency in Europe. So there's been a merge of both companies. So it's actually a fantastic time right now to be a part of this company. The growth and the potential of where, you know, and the different revenue streams that we're going to be able to provide for our clients is unbelievable. So I'm excited to see what the next few years look like.
And are you allowed to give us a contact, like a website that can reach you, or your own social media?
Yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email at damani.ralph@icmstellar.com.
And they can find you on Facebook too, right?
And they can find me on Facebook. They can find me on Instagram.
Okay. All right, Damani, all the best. You know, you have cleared up a lot of doubts for us and a lot of questions I think a lot of people had to ask. Right? I just say, hope to see you soon again, and stay safe.
And appreciate you taking the time to have me on, man. It was a pleasure.
It was my pleasure, man. Take care, Damien. I mean, Damani. Sorry, Damien. This is Damien. Don't call him a name. Take care, man.
Yeah, man.
Good.
Good.